Mr. Shrout, maybe we jumped ahead a little bit because we've been talking about equity, common, and admiralty law. Could you give us a little history lesson as to which is preeminent? How out of admiralty law, why did equity have to come up? Why did common law, well, you mentioned, common law with those individuals and admiralty coming and overlaying that. Which is predominant and which is most powerful for individuals to be able to have an effective feeling of control over their lives?
Well, actually, the most powerful law form is trust law. Now, in the Constitution, it mentions 3 particular forms, and those are not the only forms that are on the planet. Some of our most basic law forms will certainly be ecclesiastical.
Yes.
And so we go back in history and find all these things. Now, when the Constitution was written, they included those particular 3. Why they did not bring up trust law, I don't know, because the Constitution itself is a trust. Matter of fact, we're so careful about that. On our money, we put in God we trust.
That's right.
So you have to understand the history of the Constitution. And let me just back up for a moment to the Articles of Confederation. And back further than that, what's called the colonization of North America certainly started probably by the Europeans around 13th and 14th century. The Knights Templars, who had escaped from France into Scotland, were well into North America, certainly by the 1300s. Now, they didn't set up, what we know it as today, but certainly from the earliest of times, the Europeans had all come to North America for their particular reasons. A lot of people don't understand that Columbus himself navigated to North America using maps that had already been charted by the Knights Templars. And so North America was fairly well known from the earliest of times, but around the period that there started to be a mass migration of Europeans to North America, then is when we start to talk about some of the circumstances that we find ourselves in today. And that is that they had to be financed. And so many of the enterprises, what we're calling colonies and so forth, were actually a commercial enterprise to get wealthy. And so many people came under debt. And so those debts, some of them were resolved, a great many of them were not, especially the ones that pertain to England and the Bank of England and so forth. And so anyway, to take the burden of debt off of the people, they formed a corporation. Now, the purpose of any corporation is to carry debt. That's what it's for. So anyway, a lot of the folks got together and said, hey, let's incorporate and take the burden of debt off our shoulders and put it onto this straw man, a corporation. And so to facilitate that, they wrote up a corporate charter, which was known as the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation, assumed the debt, that was owed by the people who were the colonists, as they were. And then eventually it was decided, perhaps, that the Articles might be weak in some places in regards to international commerce, and so they figured that they needed to make some adjustments. Now, a lot of people don't know that we had, under the Articles of Confederation, I think there were something like 8 or 9 different presidents. And so certainly before George Washington came along, we had already had 8 or 9 presidents of America, if you want to call it that, who operated under the Articles of Confederation. So once they decided that the Articles needed to be a bit fortified, they decided to have a constitutional convention. Now, the Constitutional Convention was a secret conclave. I refer to it as a lodge meeting. The reason I say that is because practically all the participants were Scottish Rite Freemasons, and they met in assembly in secret to develop what we know has come to be known as the Constitution for the United States of America. And there were certain considerations, and I don't want to go into all that. But in any event, the purpose of the Constitution, again, was to carry the debt that had been put upon the corporation under the Articles of Confederation to alleviate the debt burden upon the people, which is exactly what it did. And so technically, in that sense, the Constitution of the United States of America was a declaration of bankruptcy. In other words, the whole thing was there to carry the debt that was owed to the King George, and so forth. And then even later on, they incurred even more debt under that corporation. And so again, because of the fact that what's called the country, now a country refers to people who are under one particular government. For instance, America is not a nation because we have a diverse population here. But we do have a country which has a government, and that government was heavily in debt, and in consequence of that, because of the debt, they were bankrupt from the very beginning, and so therefore, being bankrupt, everything had to be handled under trust law, and so trust law, which is not mentioned per se in the Constitution, is in fact the law which governs the country and the government.
So what if the Articles of Confederation, whose debts did it relieve? Did it relieve the debts of the upper tier, or did the upper tier finance the masses?
It was. You have to understand that at the time of the Articles of Confederation, that what we're calling the colonies,
right,
were actually sovereign states.
Yes. Okay.
And so the sovereign states subrogated the debt to a corporation, and the corporate charter and the bylaws is what's known as the Articles of Confederation.
And where did they learn this technology? Is this what they took?
It's age old. This is nothing new. I mean, this is how commerce has been carried on for millennia.
Why did they think that they would be able to do it without the Articles of Confederation? I mean, did they think that they were actually, did that take away their sovereignty at that point once they?
No.
That didn't.
No, if anything, it reasserted their sovereignty because, again, they did an assignment of debt to the corporation. And so at that point, the debt of the states and the people of the states was actually carried upon this confederation of states. And so they had automatically created a fiction under the Articles of Confederation. Now, even though they were still dealing in hard money, they still had created a corporation to carry the debt, and so they had created a fiction. Now, fictions are very useful things, obviously. Otherwise, the creditors of the states and of the people of the states could have, in fact, come in and seized the property under liquidation-type bankruptcy. And so to avoid that, the people formed these straw man corporations and eventually became known as the United States of America, the United States, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's all a fiction. All governments are fictions. But in any event, they created this fiction to deal with the other fiction across the ocean. And so that's what the purpose of the United States is to basically to deal with the other fictions on the planet, so that we can all do commerce without having to get